So where we are today is a second program focusing on what you need to know before you apply to medical school. And it's my honor to introduce, and I'll go into more detail, Michael Najim. Michael, can you wave? Michael.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Michael. So Michael is a recent graduate. Congratulations, Michael, for graduating from Yale yesterday. And all you seniors are now graduates of Yale, and welcome to being an alumni land at Yale. Jenny Newing. Jenny, can you wave again? Jenny's class is 16, and Jenny's a rising fourth year medical student at, at the Mcat School of Medicine, Temple University. Kristen Majurkins, can you just wave for a second? Hi, Kristen is the director for, where are we now? For health professionals advising in STEM at OCS. And Lori Coppola. Lori, can you wave?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lori. Lori is the Senior Associate Director of OCS, focusing on healthcare and STEM as well. I want to thank you all for coming to this event today, because we have over 135 participants. And I have to tell you, you are students, you're alumni from Yale College, from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, your postdocs, and your GNP students, as well as alumni. You come from 26 states. You come from the United Kingdom, actually several places in the United Kingdom. You also come from Macedonia and Germany. So we're thrilled to have you. And more than 70% of you are Yale College, representing alumni or students, with roughly about 50% of you are current students right now at Yale. Some may be the class of 2020 who just graduated. 20% of you are also from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and from the GNP schools. We also have a number of alumni from the medical profession, from nursing, medicine, and public health, who are on this as well. So let me go into a little bit more detail about our distinguished speakers. Michael, the class of 20, is from Timothy Dwight. And he just received the Roosevelt L. Thompson Prize, given to the member of the senior class for commitment and capacity for public service. So Michael, congratulations again on receiving that award yesterday.
Thank you.
Michael grew up in a Lebanese family, and he's first generation to college from his family. He majored in molecular biophysics and biochemistry and completed the certificate in advanced Spanish language. Pardon me while I keep admitting people here. He spends a lot of his time, which he'll share with you, while at Yale, working in community service, and was active of the Haven Free Clinic. Following medical school, Michael will share with you which medical school he's going to. It's not my story to tell, so Michael will share that with you when it's his turn. But when following medical school, Michael's looking to pursue a career in the intersection of medicine and healthcare policy. Michael, we welcome you and look forward to hearing your thoughts about your journey through Yale, applying to medical school, and successfully finding the right fit and spot for you. Jenny Nguyen. Jenny, the class is 16, a Jonathan Edwards member. As I said, a rising fourth year, an MD, MA student at the Mcat School of Medicine at Temple University. Jenny will share her journey, having gone through Yale for 4 years and now finishing up her third year in medical school. She also has a BS degree in molecular biophysics and biochemistry. She's also interested in the social determination of health and has decided to pursue an MD, MA in urban bioethics in a dual degree currently. When she's not doing medical school work, she spends some time in the arts and community health initiatives as an advocate and working on policy reform in healthcare, substance abuse, single payer systems, and other issues related to the immigrant community. She's a Questbridge scholar, and she continues to be very involved in mentorship, helping first-gen low-income students and individuals. And she's working on her master's thesis right now on first-generation college graduates in medicine. And after medical school, she hopes to pursue a career in primary care, policy, and community health, and work for urban underserved communities. Thank you, Jenny. It's wonderful to have you here again today. Kristen McJurkin is Director of Health Professionals Advising in STEM at OCS. And Kristen's going to share an overview with us of OCS, how OCS works for all the students here interested in the medical profession and also STEM careers. Kristen will be very specific as to the resources and opportunities you all should take advantage of. Whatever year you are at Yale, the sooner the better. And she'll also share her experience with the medical school application process. So she advises and counsels students from both Yale College and the Graduate Schools of Arts and Sciences. She's been at Yale since 2006 and been a director in her current position 2009. She has a very extensive higher education professional background, beginning her career in planning and facilities management at Widener University, where she's a BS in business administration and a master's in MED in education. She also worked at University of Pennsylvania and also at Johns Hopkins in pre-law and pre-health. And her entire resume and background is on the website for OCS. So welcome, Kristen. We're glad you're here. And Lori Coppola, Senior Associate Director, will speak directly about her role advising and counseling students, again, Yale College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences students interested in medicine careers, and medical careers, and also STEM. Prior, she worked for AT&T and led a 20-person team working on administrative matters, including billing information to customers. She has a BA and an MS in Human Services from Alberta Magnus College. And in her spare time, she is offering counseling techniques to students. I'm just doing this, sorry. To students who are pursuing their undergraduate degrees in Human Services from her alma mater. So thank you guys. That's the introduction. And now I'm going to turn over to Michael, who's going to start our discussion with you. And feel free, again, if you have questions or comments, to use the chat feature. And so, Michael, let me kick it off with you. Since you're the recent grad, as of yesterday, from Yale College, can you share with us your journey in applying to medical school?
Thank you, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really glad to be here with everybody. And I'd just like to start off by saying hello and thank you all for coming out. I know Zoom isn't exactly the way we would have loved to hold this event, but I'm really glad that you're all here. And congratulations to any recently graduated seniors in the audience, to the class of 2020. I know we didn't get our graduation that we wanted, but I'm sure we'll get an amazing celebration in due time. So I think that was a really great question, Lisa. I say that because I believe it is extremely important for every medical school applicant to sort of craft a well-founded narrative around their journey to medicine. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna share with you all my journey to medicine, my narrative, and include some of the experiences that shaped my undergraduate career and how they influenced my career interests. So my first exposure to medicine really came as a high school student when I shadowed a variety of physicians, and that sort of sparked a preliminary interest in the field. But I didn't really realize that I wanted to do medicine until I came to Yale and I joined the Haven Free Clinic. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the clinic, it's a student-run free clinic at Yale that provides comprehensive primary care and social services to uninsured members of the New Haven community. And so many patients at Haven are recently arrived immigrants that have not really had access to consistent healthcare before, or may have very little experience with healthcare in the United States. And that fact was really not lost on me as the child of two parents who immigrated to this country from war-torn Lebanon. So throughout my years at Yale, I was fortunate to hold several roles at this clinic. Having done a lot of community service in high school, I got involved right away during my first semester of freshman year as an Arabic English translator. So in this role, I was able to witness firsthand how physicians could really be advocates for patients and communities beyond the specifics of treating a specific illness. I worked as the pivot between the care provider and the patient, and that was challenging at times, but ultimately very rewarding, as I was able to bridge linguistic and cultural barriers in helping these patients receive their care. I then transitioned to becoming a dietary counselor. And in this role, I was challenged to sort of think critically about how lifestyle changes could help aid patients suffering from chronic illnesses like diabetes, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol. And then I received the wonderful opportunity to serve on the leadership board at the Haven Free Clinic as the director of the education department. And so for 1 year, I led the dietary counseling and lab results departments, and in a role that really never ceased to challenge me on a day-to-day basis. This role also sort of developed my appreciation for the collaborative environment of medicine, as well as the leadership that this career entails. So these collective experiences really convinced me that I not only sort of had a firm-rooted passion for medicine, but also the fortitude and professionalism to succeed as a medical student and as a future physician. And I can say that I'm super excited to continue this journey a little bit later this summer as a medical student in the inaugural class at the Kaiser Permanente School of Medicine in Pasadena, California.
Yay. Congratulations, Michael. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll be back to Michael. Jenny, can you share with us, now that you've gone through Yale for 4 years and now you're finishing your 3rd year as a medical student, in terms of your perspective looking back, what you went through and what may be helpful for others on our Zoom webinar today would like to know in advance, or things they're experiencing that they could relate to what you went through. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Lise, and also that's an awesome question.
Can you speak up? Can you speak up slightly? Sorry.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so like Michael has a really inspirational story for why he wanted to pursue medicine. And I guess for me, it was kind of a similar thing. I was always interested in the social determinants of health. I mean, I come from Elmhurst, New York, which is a very urban, underserved community. I was seeing all of these inequities and inequalities on like a daily basis in my own community, wanting to find like a way to contribute and find ways to help people live their best lives, in a sense. So eventually it led me to choosing to pursue a career in medicine. And I guess looking back on the process, I would say that my #1 piece of advice would be to be very strategic and to be very organized. Like Kristen and Lori will give you timelines and like ranges, but definitely try to stay on the earlier side of whatever ranges that they give you. And also be sure to check in every so often to make sure that, you know, all of your paperwork is being processed and nothing's being lost. Like for example, in my case, I think my MSPE or like my committee letter wasn't ready by the time that it was supposed to be because it had gone lost. So I'm glad that I checked in when it was supposed to be due, so then they could have gotten started on it, and it wasn't too late compared to when it should have been in. And I think another thing would be to also definitely seek advice from your other mentors. It's nice to have a couple set of eyes on your different application materials, and to also get different opinions too when you're going through this process.
That's great. Thank you. Kristen, this is great. Now we're going to hear from the OCS, the professionals of the Office of Career Strategy. Can you give an overview based on what Michael and Jenny have shared in terms of your role and the role of OCS and how to help students through the process?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, and I extend my congratulations to everybody who has just graduated, and given how everything has been the last few months, I hope everybody is well. And actually, I think this type of event allows many more of us to get together, so it's really exciting. Lori's going to talk a little more specifically about, you know, health professions, opportunities and services that we provide. But in the Office of Career Strategy, so, you know, where I worked prior to coming to Yale was Johns Hopkins University, and health professions was located in a very standalone office. But at Yale, we are part of the Career Services Office, and at Yale, we're called the Office of Career Strategy, which I honestly think is really exciting just because we have access to so many resources. So the Office of Career Strategy serves undergraduates and from Yale College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and postdoctoral scholars. And we offer, you know, general career advising, professional school advising for health professions, pre-law, MBA, you know, graduate school, things related to employment and internship opportunities. And then we also have different specialized areas. So we have common good and creative careers advisors that focus on nonprofit, government, education, and arts. And then we have some STEM career advisors that are focusing more on science research, technology, engineering, data science, statistics. But within our office, we offer, again, a broad range of things, including employer relations, networking events, resumes, and cover letter reviews. And, and we serve, all the alumni of, like I said, Yale College, the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and postdoctoral students. And, particularly from the health professions, I know Lori and I see alums all the time. And it's really great. I, just today talked to people who graduated 1 or 2 years ago, as well as people recently that I've talked to that have graduated 10 years ago that are, looking to pivot their career into the health professions. And we're definitely available to talk to you about how to work that process for you, how to work it as an undergraduate. People come to health professions from all different perspectives. Certainly some people come in as first years and know they want to go to medical school or in other health professions. We definitely have students every year that are going to dental school. We've had a pretty robust pre-vet group in recent years, and then definitely a few students that have gone into nursing or physical therapy or physician's assistant programs as well. So we're really happy to talk to anybody at any stage of their career at any point, whether they're an undergraduate or after graduation.
Kristen, thank you. And Lori, thanks again for being on our panel. And if you could share with us your experience in your day-to-day responsibilities working with students and also alumni specifically on the application process to medical
Sure, be
school.
glad to. Great. Well, I'm glad that we're here to bring this all to you. I'm glad to see that there's a great audience that's viewing this. So I've been with the Office of Career Strategy, actually with Yale, for a little over 3 years now, and primarily have been working in the health professions role. Most recently, as Kristen mentioned, we are transferring a little bit over to the STEM Connect area, which has really been exciting for us. So we do, are able to see some students that are interested in STEM fields outside of health professions. For our role, I meet with a lot of students, and that's like the favorite part of my job. What we talk about most usually are academics, like your pre-med requirements, what the majority of med schools are looking for. Also, what we like you to kind of keep in mind are the other parts of your application that will allow you to best prepare for medical school. This is not a sprint, as we say. It is a marathon, and it is something that you have, if you have some interest in going into the medical field, to start exploring and finding ways to gain experience early on, because that way you could really for yourself kind of determine, is this really a field that I want to be in? So I think as Michael mentioned, and also Jenny, getting that outside experience is really, I think, an important part to your whole process. So, we do talk with our students about that. We talk about the, importance of community service, leadership skills that you can develop along the way. And again, remember, this is not a sprint. This doesn't have to happen in year 1 or year 2. It's a process. I consider it building blocks. With a strong foundation being your academics, and then you build on that from there. And so then, you just kind of go through these processes and determine, what experiences are really resonating with you, and, kind of immersing yourself in those so you can give yourself a good idea of what a particular experience is about. And then our office offers our services, as Kristen mentioned, to Yale College students, alumni, Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. We work with PhDs that want to become MDs. I'm working with a couple right now in this cycle. And what we do is in the year that you plan to apply, it is a year-long process. We do start meeting with you more regularly, and we have a deeper dive meeting, I call it, which is about an hour long, and we really talk to you about, you know, your readiness for medical school and how you're feeling about it, and if there's areas that perhaps you need to work on or to evaluate a little bit deeper. So, you know, we welcome anyone coming into our office. We, you know, we've been transitioned to the Zoom world now. So, you know, we have appointments available. So, you know, come on by our remote office and we'd love to meet with you.
That's great. Thank you, Lori. Well, okay. Well, that's great. Well, we're going to open it up now for our Q&A session because we really want to hear from everybody on this Zoom event. So please start sending your questions through chat, or even if you'd like to raise your hand and say it out loud, say it aloud, that would be great too. I want to just give a shout out to our friend Catherine Lai. Catherine, can you wave? Catherine was one of our stars and one of our heroes last week, 2 weeks ago, or last week actually, who shared her journey. She's a fourth-year resident at the Yale School of Medicine. And Catherine, thank you for joining us today. And I don't see Shahira yet, but Shahira should also be on. And if Shahira, if you're on, you could give a shout out too when she comes back on. Let me open up the questions. Just to start the discussion, it's all open for you guys, for Michael, Jenny, Kristen, and Lori. Since it's for me, who didn't major in the STEM field at Stanford as an undergraduate, but Michael and Jenny both majored in MB&B. Do you have to major in MB&B to go to medical school? Who wants to take a stab at?
I'll go ahead and
that? And
no.
by the way, we have a lot of participants when they gave us their Yale school and year. Many of the current students are MB&B majors or plan to major in that area.
Yeah, I think the advisors for MB&B tend to say that, you know, MB&B is a good major to have if you're looking to go into medicine. But I guess having gone through most of it already, I will say, like, the major that you choose in undergrad doesn't really matter, I think, once you go to medical school, because honestly, like, as an MB&B major, we never took physiology. We didn't take a lot of the like I don't know, like organ system biology topics. And so what we covered in MB&B was probably only worth about like 3 weeks of what I've learned in medical school so far. It really is just about you acquiring all of these different things as you go through it. So if you're a humanities major, that's awesome for you. Like, I think you should really just choose to major in what you're passionate in, because that's going to prevent burnout and that's going to keep you going through this whole journey.
That's great. Michael, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so my advice to anybody thinking about applying to medical school is not necessarily to choose your major or your course of study, you know, as kind of like a direct correlation to what you will learn in medical school, because as Jenny was saying, MB&B doesn't really cover anatomy or physiology or potentially anything, you know, you might learn in medical school. It does cover biochemistry, of course, but I'd really encourage you all to sort of pursue a course of study that really appeals to you, that appeals to, you know, perhaps your previous interests. You know, maybe you might think there's another course of study that might connect to your career as a future physician that might not be science related. And so, you know, you'll end up enjoying your major more, and you're probably more likely to be successful academically and really enjoy your undergraduate career, which should be looked at separately than your medical school journey.
I'll just say a couple of words nationally. The numbers break down to about 70% to 30% science versus non-science majors. And, you know, Yale has typically fallen right in line with that. We've had a little bit of an uptick in science majors in recent years, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the neuroscience major came about, 2 or 3 years ago. You know, so we've shifted, but again, you know, we've always been a school that has many successful non-science majors applying to health professions programs.
I'd just like to add one final comment on that. The value of a liberal arts education is really, really important. You really are well-rounded as far as your writing skills, public speaking, all of those types of skills, which are really important when you think about that in the context of medical school. So you just, really have a broader perspective and a breadth of, education and background.
One of our MDs had noted that it's important to do research in a field that interests you, especially for the more competitive residency programs. Research really matters, and if you'd like to contribute more to the comment, feel free. But just make note of that when you're trying to figure out extracurricular activities while at Yale, in addition to your academic courses. Maybe you think about research as one of those options. Michael, since you just graduated, did you do research as well as your work at the Haven Clinic?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, I believe the question that was in the chat was referring to while you're in medical school and then applying to residency as far as what kind of research you might need.
Yeah.
And I think that the answer in the chat addresses that pretty well. I can't speak to the residency process. However, for the med school process, yes, I did do research at Yale. I did a variety of research, clinical research, health policy research at Yale New Haven Hospital. And I think that is important, certainly, for your medical school application process. But I think the type of research you do, again, should also be something that you're interested in. It shouldn't be something that you feel might be an obligation or somebody's telling you to do it. Ultimately, you'll be probably more likely to be successful if you yourself are interested and engaged. After all, research is sort of a process of gaining knowledge, and I think that it's important to have that intrinsic interest in whatever field you're doing research in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I know a lot of undergraduates, though, who also do research while they're undergraduates. So I know the question was coming more from residency, but how do students find research opportunities while they're undergraduates?
I think just a lot of emailing around. For me, I knew what topics in particular I was interested in. So I knew I was interested in immunobiology. So I just emailed some professors. I emailed Dr. Iwazaki in particular, and she accepted me on for a project. But a lot of times if you are in various groups too, they'll send out emails with opportunities. And like, if you go to speaker events, you can always talk to people at those events afterwards and network. Oftentimes they will set you up with opportunities. Like one of my clinical research projects came about from one of those email threads, and that mentor has been really meaningful in my life. I mean, we still keep in touch to this day, even though I've graduated like 4 years ago.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, there's a variety of undergraduate organizations. The one that immediately comes to mind is the Yale Undergraduate Research Association, or URA. And they have a whole database of potential, primary investigators who are looking for undergraduates. The health professions newsletter also typically posts research positions, whether they be for over the summer or during the year. But I'd really say the wonderful thing about Yale is that it is such a great research university, and all it takes really is an email sometimes to just reach out to a PI, and in whatever field. It could be at the hospital as well. It doesn't have to be in your major or your department. And I think it's really accessible. So I was very grateful for that.
Kristen, I have a question for you, Kristen and Lori. We have several students who are in this discussion, current undergrads at Yale, who are majoring in history or other more humanities related. What kinds of things can they do if they're interested in going to medical school, to major in humanities, but also have the strong science components to be a strong applicant? Because I think you said 30% or so who go to medical school come out of the non-sciences. Was that correct? Did I say?
Sure, yeah, definitely. Nationally, about 30%. But we're around 20%. So one thing I always tell non-science majors is you do always want to be taking and doing well in your science classes, because when you apply to medical school, your GPAs will be calculated as such that you'll have a science GPA, a non-science GPA, and a cumulative GPA. So just by nature of being a non-science major, you'll have probably less science classes in your science GPA. So it is important to be taking and trying to do as well as you can in your science classes. And, you know, and then it's always good to try to take some upper level science classes as well. But after that, it's, you know, again, both Jenny and Michael touched on research, and it really is about the research that's supporting your academic interests. And, you know, I really feel, you know, biomedical science research is good, but not everybody wants to do that. So people may be doing a thesis in history or more qualitative or quantitative research, and you're still getting that really robust research exposure, particularly in your undergraduate years at Yale. And all of that contributes to your application. And then you're really thinking about what's your narrative. I mean, Jenny and Michael are, you know, two applicants, and, you know, Catherine's on here too, and, you know, that had really strong narratives of who they were, what they were interested in, what they were committed to in, you know, whether it was in community service or healthcare or, you know, other areas of campus. And from a medical school perspective, I mean, that's really part of what they're looking for as well, like that dedication and commitment to what it is. I hate to use the word passion because I feel like it's an overused word, but, you know, like what drives you and what motivates you, and then, you know, how that translates to healthcare.
Kristen, that's great. That really leads into one of our next questions for you and Michael, Lori, and Jenny. What other opportunities are there outside of the academics and outside of research, such as a Haven Free Clinic or other community health service organizations, nonprofit in New Haven or elsewhere that students can get involved in? Mike, you talked about your program, but with maybe a little bit more detail and other opportunities you saw when you were at Yale, and Jenny as well.
Yeah, sure. So Haven's great, and I did talk about that a little bit earlier. There are definitely other opportunities. There's an organization called HAPPY, which stands for Hypertension Awareness and Prevention Program at Yale. And they primarily focus on sort of blood pressure monitoring in the homeless community in New Haven. And there are certainly opportunities to volunteer at Yale New Haven Hospital. And there are certainly other advocacy groups that might not be sort of directly related to a clinical setting, but may relate to health in one way or another. And if you know, if that's what you're looking for, and I'm sure maybe Jenny could elaborate a little bit more if she has anything.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't do necessarily like purely clinical volunteering work. So for me, I definitely wanted to explore a bunch of different things. I was interested in like performing arts and a lot of cultural group stuff. So for me, I actually volunteered at the Yale New Haven Hospital by performing music for patients. So I played the ukulele and I sang, and I had a friend who played the piano who would accompany me sometimes. And besides that, I was also like an art therapy volunteer, which was a really rewarding job. I mean, I went around, I got to do arts and crafts with patients, and, you know, you get to see the power of the arts and just kind of helping them to forget that they're bedbound or in a hospital for a couple of minutes at a time. And it gives them something to look forward to, this sense of empowerment and like finding control in something when they're in such a vulnerable and helpless situation. And then besides that, I also taught music to children at the Yale New Haven Hospital Daycare Center. So although not all of it was necessarily like clinical volunteering, that was what my shadowing experiences were for. And this was a way for me to use my like interest in like the arts to actually make a difference in people's lives.
That's great. Did you guys use Dwight Hall at all for any of your opportunities? Or Kristen or Laura, do you recommend for students on our call to go to Dwight Hall to find advocacy or other service projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great resource. You know, there's a lot of other things, like as Jenny mentioned, you know, even though she was you know, doing something that related to art or music, she was still in the hospital environment, which I think is really helpful because you're there on a regular basis and you get used to seeing, you know, patients, and you get used to seeing the healthcare teams, and you kind of like just absorb yourself into that experience. But Dwight Hall has a lot of really good opportunities. We also have on our website, we provide, it's probably like a 6 or 7 page PDF that has all kinds of healthcare related volunteer experiences that, you know, you can get involved with either within the hospital or outside of the hospital in the surrounding area. So yeah, there's definitely room for all of that, and Dwight Hall is a good resource. Absolutely.
That's great.
I thought I could chime in also, Lisa, because
Oh, yeah. Hi, Catherine.
Hey. So I just wanted to emphasize that it really doesn't matter what you do, but that you show that you are proactive and that you are able to speak about whatever experience you ultimately choose to do. I've done both medical school and residency interviews, interviewing the applicants. And ultimately, whether or not you have a short CV or a long CV, what's important is that if I or someone else asks you a question about that specific thing on your CV, that you can actually speak about it thoroughly. And for example, if you decide to join a research project and maybe you just did a very small part of that research project, but you can't actually tell me what the conclusion of the paper was or what the whole point was. It doesn't matter that it's on your CV or if you have 10 research projects or 10 activities if you can't tell me what the point or why you chose to do those things were.
That's, Catherine, thanks for bringing that up, because one of the questions on the chat was how many research or references or papers, you know, are good to have toward an application.
There's no magic number. I mean, maybe there is a specific, you know, having a long one may make you look attractive initially, but if you can't say anything about any of them in your interview, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on who your interviewer is. Like more recently when I've done interviews, you know, even though I have like 10 publications, nobody has asked me about them. So I guess like do what makes you feel like empowered, do what excites you. Like Catherine said, I completely agree. I think you not necessarily be doing all these things with an end game of, oh, will this impress medical school admissions committees, but rather like do it because you care about it and you want to explore this topic. Because I think otherwise you might just feel yourself burning out, or you'll potentially regret not having used this time to explore other interests before medical school.
Right. I just want to quickly add something. I totally agree with what Jenny and Catherine have said, because I think it can be easy to sort of look at, you know, fulfilling, you know, what you might consider to be requirements for medical school as kind of like going down some sort of checklist and thinking you need to do, you know, so many different things, where, you know, as I started, you know, when I spoke at the beginning of this event, it's really about crafting your narrative. And that's going to be different between, you know, Michael and Jenny and somebody else. And in crafting that narrative, you should really, you know, pursue, again, what you want to do. And kind of a secondary interest of mine was education, for example, coming from, you know, being a first-generation college student. I volunteered for an organization called Matriculate, which helps provide free college counseling to first-generation low-income students. And education was just a personal interest of mine. It's something that has really changed my life and something that is very important to me. And I think that was such an enriching experience that didn't necessarily have to do with medicine, but I think it really helped me grow personally and developed me into the person I am today. And for that reason, like, I wouldn't have rather spent that year doing anything else than, you know, volunteering with that organization.
That's great, because one of the questions popping up was, do you have to do research to apply to medical school?
I think it's also important, to point out that, you know, you don't have to choose something that's specifically medicine based. because really the key of being a good doctor is being well-rounded and knowing who you are. When I was at Yale, I was a layout and design editor at the Yale Daily News, and I designed the Yale Journal of Public Health. And those seem completely different than what I do now in medicine, but actually what I gained from those experiences is that now I'm actually much better than a lot of people at putting together papers and figures and research papers that make sense. So just because something is not that seems specifically medicine based doesn't mean you can't use that to show that it will make you a better physician or researcher or whatever.
Thank you.
I just wanted
Catherine,
to-
by the way, is 09 from Yale. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so medical school admissions committees, I mean, what they're looking for is competencies. And if you look on their website, there's, you know, a lot of different competencies that fall into many different categories. So certainly there's the academic competencies, which come through GPA and Mcat, but then they're looking for other things, understanding of medicine. So it is good to have some exposure to a medical field, whether it's through volunteering or clinical research or, you know, something. But then the other competencies are falling into categories such as leadership, communication skills, cultural competency, teamwork. And, you know, and just as Jenny, Michael, and Catherine have all pointed out, they're gaining these experiences through a multitude of activities. And so, you know, it's really, what is your dedication? What is your service to others? What are the skills that you are learning? Everything is transferable to medicine. You walk into a patient room and you're going to be educating them most likely on whatever it is they're there for. You're going to be part of teams in medicine. So, you know, having a design and layout background and being able to think strategically about things is going to be a skill that's transferable to medicine. So that's what, you know, that's what I encourage people to think about. Whatever it is you're doing, what are the skills you're developing that you can share?
That's great. Related to that are the questions that are a couple in here I want to group together. Should I take a gap year? Should I wait and apply a year from now? Should I apply to medical school and postpone it a year? How do you deal with that kind of the gap year question? And related to that is the postbac for the alumni here who are thinking about going to medical school and maybe have to go back to school to pick up some medical related courses. Talk about that kind of category of not going directly from college to medical school, but maybe a different route. How do you do that?
So there's kind of two things in that question, pretty significantly laid out, but for gap year, I'll just approach that for now. That's really like a decision that you have to kind of evaluate as you go along. So you know, we've been talking about, you know, like I said, the building blocks of preparing for medical school and beyond. You know, so, you know, you want to have your academics in a certain place. You know, you want to be sure that you've gained the experiences to give you the knowledge that you need to know how you've become familiar with healthcare. Because medical schools want to know pretty much like three kind of main things. You know, what is your motivation for medicine? What has been encouraging you to pursue medicine, and why do you want to use medicine, let's say, to help others? You know, where there's other ways you can do that. So, but why do you choose medicine? Then they want to know, what have you done to get familiar with medicine? So, you know, then that's where your experiences come in, where, you know, you've maybe done, you know, Haven or the Living History Project through Yale New Haven Hospital. And then they also would like to have a glimpse of, you know, what your vision is. You know, how will you help others by means of medicine, as both, you know, like a physician and a colleague. So by getting all of that, you know, these are all the parts that you want to put together before you're ready to really apply to medical school. Some situations are that, you know, you have to boost your academics. So then that's where perhaps a post-bac program will come in. Other situations are you want to just get real world experience and you decide you want to work for a year. Maybe your research, you want to do more research, so you do that for a gap year or two. Or maybe you feel you haven't, you did other things in college that, at Yale that didn't allow you to do a lot of patient interaction or healthcare experience. So then maybe that's what you do. So there's a various amount of reasons as to why students take gap years. But what I would say, to sum it all up, it is really unique for the applicant themselves. And that's something, Kristen and I can talk to you about, throughout the time that we spend together, whether, while you're at Yale or beyond.
Great advice. Great advice. How about anybody else with comments related to a gap year or post-bac?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can also take a gap year during medical school too.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Students take a research year either after their second or after their third year of medical school to, work on some projects or to explore different specialties some more. So like for me, I took a thesis year in between my second and third year of medical school. And it was actually a really good experience. I mean, I've been, going straight through school for so long, and to have kind of a break, even though I was still, shadowing and doing research and stuff, was really nice. And I discovered a lot of new hobbies. So when I started third year again, which is supposed to be your toughest year in medical school, it actually has been incredibly fulfilling. And I don't think I've ever felt more like satisfied and fulfilled in the work that I do as I have this year.
That's great. Great advice. Are there any other Yale alums on here who are MDs or in the profession who would like to share their comments related to any of these topics? We'd love to hear from you as well. So I just want to make sure people know that they're invited and welcome to speak up on the topic. Jenny, also, I'm wondering in terms of that, your comment, it's an excellent one about, and other people have made comments in the chat about how beneficial it was to take a year off somewhere in this. And because it's such a long haul to go from being young and going through college and medical school and residency and clinical work, and it could be 15 years or more. How do people like you and others deal with preventing burnout? What strategies do you guys use? That's helpful to know way in advance, because this is a long-term, it's right, it's a long-term opportunity. Michael's nodding. Yeah. What advice do you have to share given where you are? And maybe Catherine like to jump in, or any others would be great to jump in. Kind of how you deal with wellness.
Yeah, definitely. I think burnout is such a critical issue in medicine. And like I've kind of alluded to before, I think it all comes down to your intrinsic motivations for wanting to do medicine. And you really have to keep that in mind as you're going through the many challenges that you will face while going through this long training process. I think, like for me personally, when I was growing up, I worked at my aunt's laundromat after school every day. And it was in listening to different immigrants' stories and different employees' stories that, I knew that I wanted to be able to give them a voice and to advocate them, because oftentimes people who are undocumented or who are vulnerable and distrust the medical system don't have kind of the power to speak out and to make their needs heard. So I knew that I wanted to go through this process so that I could, give them a voice, and also to provide them with culturally compelling care and to empower others, to give them the tools that they need to take charge of their well-being and to spread it among their communities. So that's something that I always kept close to my heart. And I think once you go into medical school, it's really important to keep doing the things that excite you and interest you. So for me, like the Masters in Urban Bioethics program let me design a community engagement project. And that was a really meaningful way for me to get involved in community work as well. And that was something that really makes me feel fulfilled and gives me purpose while I'm going through this. And also the advocacy work, all that other stuff, and performing arts, other extracurriculars that I do, they're not necessarily things that residency programs might care deeply about, but they're things that drive me and keep me sane. So I think that's really prevented me from ever having burnout in medical school. I think in general, I've always been very content.
I think it's also important, maybe a little bit more so for residency, but also for choosing a medical school. It's important to choose a medical school or residency that's really the best fit for your personality and your interests. I think having gone to Yale and probably hearing the mantra or feeling like we always have to go to what is considered the best or the best ranked institution, as you go through your medical training, it's not necessarily anymore about what is considered the best, because best is relative. And you might, if you go to a medical school where their goals may be to produce, people who are the chairs of departments, or people who are, they're more academically based, but you are someone who wants to be a family physician, who wants to live in a small town, you're not going to be happy or surrounded by people with the same mentality. If you go to that kind of institution, this becomes even more important in residency, where you just really need to choose people, a community that is similar to you, and that way you have that support. Because if you're surrounded by people who have different goals than you, then you're not going to be happy, and it'll be easier for you to burn out.
Great advice. Great advice. Kristen, we were talking about this earlier, and Lori, do you want to share from your view, being advisors to students and alumni, how to address kind of expectations and the whole fit, how that all comes into play?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think they've all expressed it incredibly well, but it really is. I always say medical schools, they each have their own personality, and one is not better than the other. It's just what fits with what you're looking for in terms of how the curriculum is set up, what kinds of things the students are doing in the community, or, research wise, or, whatever it is that is important to you. But having balance in your life is something we all need to do at any point. And I think if these last 3 months of how the world has been, it's, really shown us all how we need to, feel connected to what's important to us, and, prioritize what's important to us. And, it's definitely difficult in this 24/7 news world to block out the noise. But I think when you can do that and really focus on what's important to you, then it guides you into the type of, physician or healthcare provider that you want to be. And, and that to me is the best success that there is, because I think all the medical schools are great. And I think it's really, again, finding that fit of, who's going to give you what you need.
It's great advice. Great advice. Laura, I see you nodding also.
Yes, absolutely. And I would also add to that practicing self-care early on is really something you want to kind of think about. There's a lot of stressors, and as we all know, as Kristen said, we're going through something now that we none of us have ever been through before. So there's always that unknown out there, and I think self-care is really important throughout. I mean, really the entire process and beyond that. Because it's tough. It's tough. It's not an easy road. And, that's why, when you embark upon this are the ways that you learn about it, and you educate yourself more on it and get that experience going, that it's really going to be helpful throughout the whole time in applying, and then attending medical school, and then applying for residency again. So I think self-care is really something to really kind of put on your agenda item to take care of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. One of the things we haven't shared, and I know Jenny and Michael are both first generation to college. And for those who are also first generation and or coming from a low income background, who haven't had the level of support, maybe with family members who are in the profession or other kinds of work, can you talk about kind of what are being a first gen to college, now to medical school and beyond, kind of how you see it, and maybe some insights that would be helpful to share if you felt comfortable to the participants who share similar backgrounds?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good question, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. So I think something that potentially a lot of students, especially at Yale, and I think probably a greater proportion of first generation students might, feel imposter syndrome during their time as at Yale, and I think even especially so as a pre-med. And I think that it is a very unique challenge in the sense that pursuing medical school, a career in medicine is a very long path, and you might think that you can put your happiness on hold for a couple of years, and that's just not the case, because you know you can never really just sort of delay that. It's something that you need to learn early on, and I think Lori and our other speakers sort of brought that up. Self-care is extremely important, because how can we as future physicians want to care for other people if we're not caring for ourselves? I think that really starts within oneself. And for me, I kind of always had to sort of keep the voice in the back of my mind a little bit low, saying that, like, yes, you do belong here, and you do belong at Yale, you do belong in this career, and sort of that sort of affirmative language, I think, is really important. But there might be a deficit of support, there might be a deficit of sort of social capital or some other things, but for me, a big obstacle at the beginning of my college career was really asking questions, was seeking support. And that's because I probably wasn't used to that beforehand. And, people like Kristen and Lori are really there to help you. And, if anybody in the audience is feeling like they, might be shy or might not feel like they belong in medicine, you do. The motivation comes from within you. And, I just encourage everybody to really be proactive, even though it could be scary at first, but once you open one door, many will follow. And, I'm really grateful that I sort of had that personal growth trajectory in these last few years.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I'm a counselor, and I work a lot with first gen students and young adults. And I think a lot of people are just afraid to ask for help. They think it's a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength to go ask for help, wherever it is. And people very much want to help. So I think we have to break down that barrier and that image of we have to know everything, we have to be right every time, we have to look like we're solid, when in fact we have a lot of questions or doubts or we're not sure. It's actually okay, and it is strength, not a weakness. Jenny, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree that that is a strength and not a weakness. Fun fact, it's actually one of the things that they grade you on in medical school. There's always a section about whether you're aware of your weaknesses and whether you seek feedback and take it well. But I definitely agree that learning how to ask for help is important. I think, like in my experience, I guess I hadn't really asked for much help in college. But then during medical school, when I finally felt like I started needing it, I would be turned down a lot of the times, or people would say, oh, you're doing fine, like you don't need help right now. But, I was trying to be proactive. And I think at first I was kind of discouraged by this, or, in medical school, professors are a lot more busy than they are in college. It's very difficult to find these mentorship relationships that you had where, you would like go out to the dining hall or go out to get coffee with your professor. So it's more of a, oh, if you have a question, email me kind of relationship that you have. So I think that one of the biggest game changers for me, at least, was when I started clinical rotations, and I was actually interacting with physicians on a daily basis and working on teams, because I finally got that kind of in-person mentorship aspect that really has just made my medical school experience so much better. I feel so much more supported. And I think that's a really empowering and fulfilling experience in itself. I guess we haven't alluded to imposter syndrome, but that is crucial in making you feel like you belong and for really motivating you to keep going throughout the entire process.
It's really important. I see that it's past 8 o'clock. I just want to add, because we have 90 people in our webinar, I want to ask if we can continue for another 15 minutes for Lori, Kristen, Michael, Jenny. I think this is really important, and given the interest and the demand, and actually people are still joining us, I'd like to continue another 15 minutes or so.
All right, that's
sure. Okay. So Kristen, do you want to add to how you guys help the Yale students and alums who you see in terms of this imposter syndrome and not thinking they're good enough or have it all, or they work doubly hard to prove that they have it. I have the same issues myself. So I'm very familiar, but how do you deal with it as a professional, helping the students?
I mean, you know, and Lori can speak too, but I mean, I think, you know, there are only two of us, so, you know, we can't individually go out and see everybody, but we always want people to schedule appointments. I'm always, you know, I always joke with students, I'm like, they're like, well, I don't really have anything to come in and talk about. And I say, it's like a 10,000 mile checkup on your car. You know, you just come in and talk. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's med school related, you know, just how are things going? We love to check in with students, and whether it's with us or somebody else, you know, in your world, whomever that is. But I think that's, you know, really important just to, you know, have a touch point, because you may not even realize something's going on, and it is always good just to talk. You all deserve to be in college, you all deserve to be in medicine, you all deserve to be everywhere. And, you know, I remember a story several years ago. I was at the Yale Eye Center, and it's a teaching hospital, so there was a resident and an attending, and, you know, and then at one point there was a student in there who looked younger, so I thought, are they a Yale student? And I asked if they were, and they were, and, you know, and I just asked them, I said, do you know who I am? And he shook his head, yes. And I said, are you a pre-med student? Have you ever been in the office? And he hadn't. And he was a first-gen student, and who was so used to doing everything on his own. And, you know, he came in and we ended up building a 2-year relationship, and he was successful to med school, and, you know, he had definitely had some bumps along the road, but, you know, he felt like he couldn't come in because he had always been doing it on his own, and we never want anybody to do it on your own. You know, we're always here to help, and, you know, whether it's us or somebody else, reach out and, you know, and talk with people, because life is hard for all of us. And, you know, so we all need to find that person, that place where we can reach out and ask the questions and get the support that we need.
Lori, would you like to add to that?
Kristen did a very nice job saying that. I don't have that much to add, other than, you know, what I try to do at the beginning of each one of my sessions is just to kind of, you know, decompress and say, hey, how's everything going? How's this going? You know, how are your classes this semester? You know, are you handling them okay? Is there anything I can do to help? So I kind of, you know, try to do that before, you know, put everyone at ease, because we are there to help. You don't have to know, you don't feel like you're behind in anything when you come to see us. There's no such thing as that. It's, you know, especially on the road to medical school, you apply when you are ready to apply. And if that means, you know, you don't start pre-med until maybe your sophomore or junior year, then that's what that means. And then you take the time you need to complete everything you need to do to prepare yourself. So really, we would definitely encourage you, please come in and, you know, talk with us, and we're always there to help you out.
That's great. I was going to throw out just 2 other places for the alumni and students on this webinar. Cross Campus is a brand new program initiated by the Alumni Association and also OCS and other parts of Yale to connect alumni and students together. And everybody can join, all Yale. It's basically a closed, it is a closed group, and you can go and look up alumni. If you're students, you can look up alumni in various medical professions, and you can send them a note and say, I'd like to talk to you about what it's like to be at Mount Sinai, or what it's like to be a first-year resident or a third-year medical student.
There is a health professions group within Cross Campus, which is encompassing of all health professions and, you know, any graduate from any school from Yale.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. There's also a closed Facebook group started by a doctor called Yale Health, and you can go there, and also there are very events and webinars and things that they're putting on as well. So the alumni network is very strong, with 170,000 Yaleys. So take advantage of them in the medical field or elsewhere where you live, where you work, your hobbies, your interests. Join local clubs, join local shared interest groups. 1stGen Yale is a shared interest group that connects alumni and students with similar backgrounds, being 1stGen and or from low-income backgrounds, and we put on webinars and events in person. So come join us, and we have a closed Facebook group as well. You can join to be very current in what we're up to. But yeah, so thank you for talking about the network and support. I think that's really, really important. I'd like to ask each of our panelists for kind of a closing comment. Maybe what you, Jenny, maybe I'm going to leave it open. I'm not going to prompt it. So think about what kinds of things you would like our audience to go home with while our panelists are thinking that. My favorite question to ask for all the participants, if you can send in the chat what topics you would like us to do for future webinars while we're all here working through being sheltering in place or being modified shelter in place as some of our places open. We're still going to be active creating webinars for you, and we'd love to know what topics interest you in the medical field, outside the medical field. We love being partners with OCS. And if there are other topics that we can help connect you to the professionals at OCS and all the resources Yale has to offer, we want to do that, as well as connect to our own alumni and students. So while the panelists are thinking, please send us your comments in chat. And I have the comments already, but if you have any others. One comment that came up was preparing for the Mcat. That probably could be its own webinar, right, guys? Maybe you guys want to talk a little bit about that briefly before we go to our closing comments.
Yeah, I could touch on it briefly, although it is definitely not a brief topic. So the Mcat is certainly a very important part of the process, and I think most people know that. But again, this is a very personalized thing. It depends on how you study in terms of how much time you'll need. And the thing I would sort of, I guess, recommend across the board is try to complete the prerequisite courses at least before taking the Mcat. I know that not everybody does that. I personally found it to be useful. And what I mean by the prerequisite courses, I mean the sort of subjects that are tested on the exam. And that's just a quick Google search away. But I think having sort of some foundation in college coursework in sort of these topics will help you. Although some people do opt to self-study for certain topics, but that's sort of the one thing I would recommend.
That's great. Jenny, you want to add to that?
Yeah, in my case, I worked on campus during the school year. So I used my savings to enroll in a Princeton review course for my Mcat. I was in that year where they transitioned to the new Mcat though. So I don't know how relevant it is now to the Mcat.
Okay. Lori and Kristen, do you guys advise on Mcat preparation and what students need to do? Is that in your area as well?
So what we not formal advising, I would say, it's a lot of anecdotal information that we hear from students that have been successful with the Mcat. I think for me, what I usually tell students is put the time in up front to study and prepare for the Mcat. Give yourself that time, allow yourself that time to get the allotted hours in, which could be different for everyone. But you want to put that time up front so that your goal could be to take it once. You could take it more than once, but it's a very expensive exam, and it's not only with financially but time. Your time is really going to be eaten up having to retake that. So I try to encourage students to try and fit some way into their schedule to get that studying done and the preparation done, and then try to take as many practice tests as they can. There are a lot of resources out there. There's resources that are on the AAMC that you can check out on some Mcat prep, and they have some resources there for you to look at.
That's great. Kristen, you want to add anything to that, or pretty?
No, Lori
Okay,
covered it.
That's great. Okay, so let's come to a close, and I thank you for the chat questions on the bottom, which we'll take up. Where should we start? Michael, we started with you first. I guess we'll start with you to close. Kind of your closing remarks.
Yeah, so thank you again to everybody who showed up today and who stuck around to the end. We appreciate you guys logging on. I think sort of the one sort of parting message I'll have for, I guess, the applicants out there, or even first years or sophomores who are thinking about sort of pursuing medicine, is to, one, be patient with yourself. And I think that takes a lot of courage sometimes. You might get frustrated, whether it be academically, extracurricularly, or even with your social life at Yale. But really be patient with yourself. It is a long process anyways. So I think patience is a really good quality to have as a physician. But I think starting with yourself is really important. And that comes about with self-care. That comes about academically speaking, pursuing your interests, finding out what your interests are, maybe what you're not interested in. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail. You know, we only get stronger from that. And I think that if any of you face extra challenges in your life, that's okay. You can still do it. It might be on a different timeline. It might be a different narrative. But what matters at the end of the day is that you make your own story, and that it's unique, and that you know, you stick to it, and that you can really speak about it when it comes time to apply, as Catherine and some of the others have sort of talked about. That's really what it matters. It just matters about being authentic, sticking to what you're interested in, and never stop believing in yourself.
Great, thank you, Michael. Jenny?
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming to join us today. I will leave you with two pieces of advice. The first one is just a practical thing. One of the hidden challenges in medical school is that you will most likely need to have access to a car and learn how to drive. So just two things you guys can work on in advance if you don't already know that. Because I didn't get my license until my research year. Then for my second bit of advice, it's just a motivational message. I know this journey can be really difficult at times, but just know that during the application process, that's probably the worst of it, and don't take it personally, because it's not really a good measure of how great of a physician you will be in the future. So just don't give up. You know, like, I don't know about other medical schools, but Temple got like 11,000 applications this year, and there's 200 people in the class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's so many applicants out there, and don't feel discouraged if you don't get an interview from your dream school or you don't get a minute there, because as long as you get into one school, you can still become a physician. So just keep that in mind while you're going through this whole process.
That's great. Wonderful advice. Kristen?
I echo both what Michael and Jenny said, and there is no cookie cutter approach to this process. It really is an individualized process. I've seen a couple of questions, comments about just the current situation and, you know, trying to get clinical exposures in the COVID world at the moment. I think a lot of it is definitely going to be regional. I mean, you know, if any of you are here in the Northeast, I think it's going to be much more challenging in the immediate future to get volunteering opportunities. And, you know, I don't think anybody really knows what any of this is going to look like moving forward. Having said that, wherever you are regionally, you know, reaching out to your local hospitals, clinics, hospices, you know, maybe there's some online training that can happen, you know, as they start to think about opening things up in the next couple of months. And, you know, I think Catherine mentioned something about, you know, reaching out to people in the network, having conversations. I mean, I think that's a great way, you know, finding people that are doing things that you want to do in the future and talking with them to figure out what it's about. But then, you know, if there's any remote opportunities, so, you know, again, in New Haven, I know they've had like a medical service corps, you know, the Haven Free Clinic has been doing televolunteering. So, you know, checking locally to see if there's any of those options available where you are. I think I think everybody's going to need to be creative about how they connect, at least for the upcoming months. So, just definitely exploring those options.
That's great. Thank you very much. Great advice. Lori?
I just want to leave with a couple of parting remarks. Thank you all for joining. This was wonderful for me to, talk and meet with everyone. I think that, if you have the goal to, become a physician, that, it's worth it, stick with it, do what, you feel is good for you as far as your community service, your extracurriculars. There was a question in the chat about some, opportunities that aren't, like the advertised opportunities. There's always opportunities to create your own. I know a couple of students that have been doing just that. They've created Art to Heart, and they've worked within the hospital to draw with patients. There's another one called Hear Your Song, which is a musical volunteer opportunity. So whatever your goals are, whatever your strengths are, whatever your creativity brings you to, you can always capture that as well. So I wish everyone good luck, and we hope to see you soon.
That's great. Well, I want to give everybody a round of applause. I'll do it officially. I think there's a little fun hand down here that's kind of like cute. But seriously, I want to thank all our panelists for what a fantastic job. Michael, Jenny, Kristen, and Lori. I think it's a great combination to have a student, an alum, and the professionals in the field. I think you guys offer incredible perspective on what the issues are, what the strategies are, and what the heartfelt reasons are, how you come at it from your own point of view. And Michael would say, as your own, and Jenny, is your own narrative. What is it about you and your interests that are speaking to you about you want to help people in this way? What kinds of things do you like to do? How do you like to be in a helping profession? And then what the process is all about. So I think this has been fantastic. And I thank you for putting your emails in the chat for everyone to share to continue the dialogue. It takes about a day or two to have this recording up from Zoom, so give me a little bit of time. And again, please take advantage of Kristen and Lori and all the advantages and resources of OCS. They are there for you. These guys, I got to tell you, I've been on webinars with OCS for the last 2 months. This staff is working 24/7. They have individual appointments all day, every day, with students, with alumni on all these topics that we've talked about, plus many others from their colleagues. They really care desperately about you guys. They want you to succeed. They want to start where you are and help you get to where you want to go. So please take advantage of their guiding light and their guiding hands to really help you fulfill the dreams and the goals you have. And for Jenny, it's been a wonderful opportunity to get to see you again. We have another webinar coming up that Jenny's working on in a week or 2 or 2 weeks related to women in medicine in 1st Gen. Catherine, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being on our call and sharing your information, being at Yale, being a 4th-year resident in plastic surgery at Yale School of Medicine, being on campus. So once campus opens up for all the students who are on, Catherine, get ready. You're going to have a big coffee hour with a lot of students who want to come visit with you. And Kristen and Lori, it's been a pleasure. What?
I said, no problem.
Yeah.
I'll have coffee with anyone who wants to.
Maybe we can have the Yale School of Medicine actually create an event for you. I have an idea I'm working on. I'll share with you offline. I think we can make something happen there. But Lori and Kristen, it's great to get to know you and meet you this way. And Michael, I mean, congratulations